My guest today is the singer of the band Exhorder. Please welcome Kyle Thomas. Hey, Kyle, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
The pleasure is for me. First, I'm curious to know how you've been a thrash metal singer. Who introduced you to this music style, and who inspired you?
Well, I would think, really, it's as far as being a singer, I wasn't even truly a singer yet when I first started getting into this style of music. It was my brother and some friends that had started listening to a lot of punk rock and hardcore music. I was already a heavy metal fan, and they were also, but they started gravitating towards more of the punk rock style. And there were crossover bands at the time, if you remember, that kind of blended heavy metal and punk, bands like DRI and Corrosion Conformity. And those were the bands that really kind of opened the gateway for me. My brother and his friends were always trying to push Dead Kennedys and Black Flag and Sex Pistols, Charged GBH, all this really great stuff that I listened to it and it was like, I kind of like it, but I don't know if I'm supposed to like it. if it's okay for me to like it. And at the time, I was more of a bass player than I was a singer, and so eventually I gave in and realized I actually do like this. And it's okay to like this. And it spoke to me, the aggression. I was an angry teenager, that makes for a great recipe for writing lyrics and singing. And it was the summer of 1986 that I first started rehearsing with what eventually became Exhorder. And I had discovered this style of music maybe 6 to 8 months beforehand. So it was all really new to me. It was very fresh. And I don't know, it was just a really good match, or a really bad match, however you want to look at it. But my earliest influences from more of the metal side of it were probably vocally, I would say, James Hetfield, Tom Araya, and I started, getting, into bands like Dark Angel. So Don Doty and Ron Reinhardt were big influences for me for thrash. Schmearfink with Destruction, and then on the crossover hardcore side, I would say Mike Dean and Reed Mullen from Corrosion Conformity were really, really big influences on me. Roger Murray from Agnostic Front. I can't say that Johnny Rotten from Sex Pistols didn't have input there also. So I blended a lot of that and took it in and just tried to kind of do my own thing with it. I'm sure, especially in the early days, you could hear a lot more of that individualized influence than so now I've kind of evolved into my own thing here, I suppose. I'd like to think so anyway. I've had people tell me that they know it's me when they hear me sing, so that's a good thing.
Okay. You talked before about your teenager time, so you talk again. My next question, I think you liberate a lot of rage when you sing your song. Do you have some bad energy again or bad story to expose of you when you sing, or it's just a kind of adrenaline you like now?
It is kind of therapeutic, I guess.
Okay.
To be able to, everybody's life has ups and downs. There's great days and there's bad days. And in my experience, if you don't have an avenue to release that negative energy, bad things happen if you don't get it out of you. And it could be just that you sink into depression, or that you actually lash out at other people. or jeopardize your job status by, either not going to work or, causing problems at work. These are all bad things if you don't have that release. So for me, part of that is, if I'm taking care of myself and I'm healthy and I'm working out in the gym, that's a release for me. Also, writing and performing music is a release for me. And we also like to think that that's a release for the audience as well. When people come to a show, most of the time they're trying to forget about the bad things in the world. And when they come out to see us release all that negative energy and they get inspired by it, and they're, either headbanging or, just cheering along or getting into the mosh pit, that's a great way to take those frustrations out of your body and lose that negativity and go home cleansed, So I'm not going to go so far as to say that we provide a service to people for the betterment of mankind, but I do know this much. People usually leave our shows exhausted and happy, and that's definitely a payoff for me.
Very nice answer. You talk about sometimes we have a bad day, sometimes we have good days. With the song My Time, first single of the new album, Mourn, the Southern Sky, I think you talk about the time of everybody, with some days are good, some days are bad. So the question is, how the song is representative of yourself, the band, and the fans?
The lyrics to that song were some of the earliest lyrics that I wrote for the Mourn, the Southern Skies album. And it was at a time when I was still working in my day job that I want to say back in 1996, I started working in a career where I was installing wiring and cabling for computer systems, phone systems, camera systems, burglar alarm, fire alarm. I installed all of that stuff for 22 years. And it was something I started doing while I was working on my music career. Well, eventually I started, making a family and having kids. So it made more sense for me to make that work career my priority and kind of put music on the sideline for a minute. Not that I ever really quit, but I prioritized my job so I could provide for my family. And 2 years ago, when we decided to start doing Exhorder again, I was able to take music and put it in the front again and say goodbye to my job. It was a scary move because I'd been there for 22 years in that field and 10 years with the same company up until 2018. So that's a scary thing to walk away from, but all of the frustrations from all the years where I knew that was not where I belonged. I belonged on stage playing music for myself and for others. And when you have to go to work doing something every day that you feel that isn't right for you, it's a terrible feeling. And I think a lot of people have that. I mean, that's not to say that a lot of people don't like their job or love their job even. And that's the dream that everyone has, is to have a career that you like and can wake up happy to go to every day. And when you're not there, but stuck doing it out of necessity, it can really break you down. And that song was pretty much an ode to me or anybody else that ever felt like you're at work one day, you just want to tell everybody to get out of your way and walk out the door and never come back. It's very liberating. It was for me. It was scary, but I'm happy I did it, and I'll never go back.
I think you did the right move. And you know what? I think your answer can inspire a lot of people.
Well, I hope I haven't caused a lot of people to lose their jobs. It's funny that, that song, when we started our U.S. tour last year, and then, a few weeks later, we were out in Europe doing a European tour. That song was very new, and it's amazing how quickly people embraced it and were singing the words along with us. And it just seems like that song has really connected with people. And I've had people tell me, you have no idea how much this song is my life right now. And that makes me feel good that we're writing relevant music that people can actually feel connected to, instead of just, singing some angry, nonsensical, just gibberish, basically, that doesn't even really have any meaning. I'm not trying to change the world. I'm one person. I'm not strong enough or capable enough to do that. But if one person's day is affected in a positive way from that song, then I guess the song was successful.
All right. Last year, after 27 years, Exhorder released a new album, Mourn, the Southern Sky. Talk me about this long period of inactivity.
That's got a lot to do with the dynamics within this band and how everything works. Everything about this band, for all of the positives and the great things, there were always negatives and fragile moments within the relationships and infrastructure of this band. So, to be able to have another opportunity to do it again at this level is definitely a blessing. And the fact that people even really care that 27 years later we can come back and be received so strongly by the people who not only loved us 27 years ago, but the new people that we seem to be connecting with as well. I stayed very busy in the 27 years that we didn't do anything in other projects. I had a band called Floodgate. I joined Alabama Thunder Pussy. I joined Trouble. I've written and recorded a song with Joey Jordison from Slipknot. I did a lot, but it was tough to do it full time. I tried it a couple of times, and it was tough because my children were small. But I tried to stay busy and tried to stay relevant, and I think it paid off to a degree. I think it's definitely helped Exhorder in a lot of ways, but I can't take all of that credit. The songs, I didn't write all of the songs by myself. It was a team effort, and I don't know, there was magic in a bottle with those first two Exhorder albums. And fortunately for us, people seem to really feel the same way about Mourn the Southern Skies. I'm sure there's people that don't care for the older albums that like the new one, and there's people that maybe don't care for the new album but really like the old stuff. So the way we see it is there's a little bit of Exhorder for everybody. So, we're old men now. I'm going to be 50 next month. So I don't think like a young man anymore. So my writing is more from a wise old man or a grouchy old man, however you want to look at it. But, I try to keep it authentic and genuine in the spirit of the old music as well.
What is the principal difference between an Exhorder show in 90s than now?
Oh, the difference between the shows. Okay, I see. I do notice that for the most part, the participation and level of violence in the pit is much, much lower than it was when we were in our 20s back in the late 80s, early 90s. And I don't know if that's the fact that our audience is just older, but I mean, I do see a lot of young kids out there still, but people used to tell us all the time that, you know, that our pits were as wild or maybe even wilder than Slayer pits. As everyone knows, Slayer was always legendary for having a really vicious mosh pit. And I think, you know, it could just be partly that our audience is, for the most part, older, and it could just be that people aren't as wild as they were back then. I don't know what the answer is, and it doesn't matter to me. I don't care. The way I see it is, if people pay their money to see the show, they can stand there and watch if they want, or they can go nuts if they want. It's totally fine. What I'm happy with is if I see faces, if I see backs and butts, then I know they don't care. But if I see everyone's faces, I know they're watching and I know they care. I noticed there's starting to be a lot more girls at the shows. Women seem to be more into metal now than they ever were. And back then, we knew that the only way a girl was going to be at our show was if her boyfriend dragged her out to it. So, but yeah, other than that, from our perspective on stage, it's a little bit harder work to perform at that level because we're twice the age that we were back then. But I still give it everything I got, and I try to stay in shape so that I can deliver the same quality show that I did when I was young enough to do it. And in some ways, I think I'm actually better prepared for it now because I really, I didn't prep myself for the shows the way I do now back then. And I don't know. I'm definitely a better singer than I was back then. I can tell you that.
Very cool. Just to close, and I can't wait for this answer. Can you explain why the song Dizzy Creator is so popular for your fan base?
That's a good question, and I don't know that I understand why that one above all the other ones, because there's some really, really special songs that we have that have always been like all of our best songs, but that one always seems to be the one. And it's got a little bit of everything. It's got the slow, heavy, simplistic beginning. It's got aggressive, fast parts. It's got technical music, and it's got lyrics that just, at the time, people weren't as it wasn't as frequent for people to say and spit out the awful lyrics that they are. They're just, and I don't mean that in a these lyrics are terrible way. I mean, like, these lyrics are really dangerous. You know, the song is dangerous. It makes you feel like, you know, that this piece of music is scary, like horror music, almost like a horror movie, you know? And that maybe that's the part that's so attractive to people. When something seems like, you know, like when people ride down the highway and there's traffic because there's a car accident. Well, everyone slows down because they want to see what happened, whether it's good or bad. They want to see it. So I think it might be the same thing. This song is kind of like our train wreck, and everyone's slowing down to stop and get a good look.
I love the picture. Kyle Thomas, thank you for your time. I think you can inspire a lot of people with your story, with your music. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you very much for all you do in this music world, and can't wait for the next album.
Thank you, Gabriel. Appreciate it.